I'm very proud to report that in the town of Southampton, we were able to pass an accelerated acquisition program. Kevin McDonald is clapping because he was one of the authors of the program, as was John Halsey, who's here also. You know, we're very fortunate because we benefit from the 2% transfer tax, and I want to thank you both, Assemblyman Thiele and Senator LaValle, for doing that. And as we hear about the troubles that the county is having with regard to acquisition, I'm very proud that we were able to put this together so that we can take advantage of the market conditions right now, the low prices, the willing sellers, the dwindling inventory of open space. Supervisor Thronholst had asked this committee excuse me, that both these gentlemen sit on to come up with something like this. They did. It was originally conceived as a $125 million bonding program over 4 years. We had some long discussions at the council table with regard to debt service. And because of that steady income stream, as well as the very low rates, they were able to come up with a very conservative approach to the debt service that allowed us to at least start with the $30 million for this year. It's important also to water quality, since so many of our acquisitions involve waterfront protection and water quality protection. So I would invite every other municipality who benefits from the 2% transfer tax to step up while the county is struggling as it is, so that we can continue before the inventory runs out to make those important acquisitions for water protection and for land protection. I'd also just like to mention, along with what Kevin McAllister was saying, I think that many of us have taken heed of the advocacy around this growing body of scientific evidence about the devastating impacts of septic on our water quality, both on the groundwater and surface waters. And we at the local level are doing some things to the extent that we can. We have our Green Committee is drafting legislation right now on sewage disposal system inspection laws, and we're working with legislator Schneiderman on sewer study for Riverside, which is a very wet area. But the thing about our area is we have a lot of very small parcels of land with individual treatment systems that are very outdated. And so it's going to be a burden on the individual homeowner if we ask them to do this, but it's absolutely crucial. We're at a crisis point at this point, because we're right on the water and we have so many of these systems. So I would just ask for the state's help to the extent that you can, looking at cluster systems perhaps. Of course, we're looking at sewage, but it's so very expensive. Anything you can do to relieve the burden on individual homeowners as we move forward. Obviously, funding for DEC and staffing for DEC is so important, but also looking into innovative approaches like the 2 systems that have recently been approved. But it's all going to cost money, and so we do need the help of the state as a partner.
It took an hour and a half for somebody to mention the Community Preservation Fund this year, which I think may be a record for this forum. And I take that as a good sign, because number one, the funding stream for the Community Preservation Fund has really bounced back since the meltdown that occurred in 2009 after the financial markets, all but collapsed. And we all know what impact that had on real estate. And that for the last 2 years, at least the funding is certainly, it's not 2007 again, but at least the funding stream has basically stabilized. And I think that's important. The other thing is that I think is important, and why it's good that nobody has had to mention the CPF, is everybody's spending the money on the things that we wanted them to spend it on, which is after a period that we had gone through audits, et cetera, where certainly there were issues. And I want to commend all of the 5 towns for really working with the senator and I to deal with the issues of the stewardship program and all of that. And I think that to the extent that there had been issues, public confidence is very strong in the Community Preservation Fund. And I should point out that since the program was enacted in 1999, I can't believe it's been that long, but it has. But over $750 million has been generated for land preservation. I don't think we could have kept conservation at pace with development on the East End without that particular resource.
I wanted to go back to talking about our bays. Kevin had mentioned before that we don't want to see our bays in a crisis stage. I would argue that some of our bays are already in a crisis stage, particularly the Forge River. The Forge River is dying and badly needs our help. The town of Brookhaven recently drafted a draft watershed management plan that was out for public review. That watershed plan the final plan should come out and should be finalized in the next few months. We want the state to help us move forward that restoration plan, which can be a roadmap for restoring and protecting the Forge River. But we need help. We also need help with funding around the Forge River. The county, I know a lot of folks are here from the county, but the county should help allocate some of the $2 million that they have for sewer funding to replace some of the old cesspools, which is a really antiquated system that does little, if anything at all, to treat the sewage coming into it. So we need to replace those with the newly approved technologies that the health department recently approved. We also, moving forward for funding dollars, we should be allocating funding dollars to areas that are degraded. They should be priority areas that receive funding infrastructure dollars. The Forge River should be listed as a priority area to receive some of these dollars because it's so badly needed there. Thank you.
I think I've attended almost every single one of those task force meetings over the last few years, but the reason that the town of Brookhaven has been able to do that comprehensive management plan was because of funding that was provided through the state, through the Department of State, under the Environmental Protection Fund, I might add. And I just want to, give some credit to Senator LaValle, who we haven't waited for that management plan, and the senator has provided funding in prior years' budget for things such as stormwater abatement projects on the local streets and highways, as well as getting Stony Brook involved with doing a lot of the initial research work that had to be done with regard to sediments, et cetera, that led to being able to get that plan done.
I would hope the senator and others would consider Sea Grant as also a source of intellectual horsepower in terms of advice on coastal issues. As many of you know, we support research statewide and conduct outreach on important coastal problems. We get state and federal money, and we're part of a nationwide network. I thought I would just very briefly talk about 4 issues I've heard raised here already and tell you what we're doing in those. Adrian mentioned pharmaceuticals in waters. Our extension staff here and upstate conducted some of these citizens take-backs 2 or 3 years ago, actually wrote a manual for education of the public for how to do this as well, as many groups have done this. One of the things we also do is serve as an intermediary between groups that may have some different opinions. We're a neutral party. We've recently brought, with Army Corps of Engineers support, we've brought them together with the Marine Bureau of DEC to talk about dredging windows, which is a very important issue, and there's a report that will be coming out on that. Finally, I want to mention we have a specialist who spends much of his time on coastal erosion, sea level rise, beach processes, and we also funded much of the red tide and brown tide research either directly or with other groups, and we're currently funding research on nitrogen input to the Long Island Sound from groundwater.
I just want you to know that my committee did a line-by-line analysis of the SUNY budget, CUNY budget, and when it came to Sea Grant, I said, that's a very, very important item, and they agreed. So I think the governor treated you well.
Right now, we're under great duress as a farming industry. The last 5 years, because of the downturn in the economy and the cost of production has gone up significantly. We're dependent upon foreign oil for many things, not only fuel and gas and diesel, but also our chemicals and our fertilizers that we use to produce crops are dependent upon oil. It is not easy sledding right now. Psychologically, our farmers are in a precarious position. Many of them have come to me and say, you know what, with all the regs and all the nonsense that we got to do, I don't know how much longer our family is going to continue. Think about, and Dick and I have had many conversations along with many of you regarding open space and farmland programs and all that. But at the end of the day, it's an economy. And if people are not able to make a living, they're not going to stay in the business. So when psychological threats come out by people who mean well, but scare the crap out of the farmers, you're encouraging them to consider selling the farm instead of considering the programs as an alternative to development. I'm going to just comment on two things that are of great importance to us. Senator, you and your colleagues, every elected official, we are blessed with really, really good, smart, intelligent legislators. We view them as our partners on all these discussions, including people like Pete Scully and the agencies that we have to work with. But one thing that I will tell you, Kevin, and I give Kevin McDonald a lot of credit, he does communicate with me and we discuss a lot of the difficult issues, and we're going to need Solomon and people like yourselves to wade through some of this, particularly the pesticide issues. The idea of zero tolerance is not scientifically doable. Before we start talking about getting rid of products and where their place is, that is something that we have recommended as part of the pump plan through DEC, is further scientific discussion by scientists, not pseudoscientists, not by people even like myself as advocates. We need the Water Authority, DEC, Health Department, Stony Brook, Cornell to discuss these. Are there viable alternative options to replace these materials? One of the ones that was mentioned, imidacloprid, do you realize that here in New York, it's being used by Department of Agriculture to not control, eradicate Asian longhorn beetle, which is an invasive from China, and it has the possibility of destroying all our forest land in New York State. So there are reasons why pesticides are used, and it's for protection of our investments, plays a role in society. Imagine if New York City was not able to use rodenticides. We'd have bubonic plague back. How about controlling the bed bugs and the cockroaches in apartment buildings? What do you think the people of New York, what kind of conditions? And Kevin has said to me for years, and Baykeeper, we have had many discussions about this. We don't know of an alternative to nitrogen. We have to use nutrients to grow crops. We need three things. We need sun, we need water, and we need nutrients. The program administered by Vito and Dale, which is the stewardship program for agriculture, we take very seriously. I gave Kevin earlier this year a copy of our Ag Forum agenda. This is front and center for the last 20 years, not 10 years, 20 years, that we have encouraged our farmers do a better job, be environmentally and socially responsible on how you operate your farms, and implement best management practices according to the best principles that we have by Ag and Markets, Soil and Water District, Cornell, et cetera. This is an important part of Long Island, and I am wrapping up, Senator, that I wanted to not to be forgotten, that you're talking about families and livelihoods, and we have to consider the economic side, and I was really pleased with Dick Gamper, what he said earlier. That is the approach that we too want to take. We need further discussion, no rash decisions, and we got to work on this together.
Farmer, I'm impacted by poor water quality, and am just thinking of a couple ways that aquaculture can actually help. I've been working with the Peconic Land Trust, our cooperative, the Noank Aquaculture Cooperative, and the Peconic Land Trust and the National Grape Foundation have been working on a program we call the Peconic Pearls program, where each oyster that we sell, we get 10 cents for projects that benefit the Peconic estuary. So we've gotten to the point now where we can put a team together and try and figure out how to spend the money that we've already collected. to do projects that would benefit the bay, maybe something like showing homeowners how to cultivate and plant vegetation along the shoreline that's better than having grass, and will do some to mitigate the nitrogen going into the bay. The other thing is that oysters are actually pretty good at eating things that have nitrogen in them and reducing nitrogen in the bay, and so perhaps looking at programs where shellfish beds are established and we get nitrogen credits for taking the nitrogen out of the bay through our shellfish cultivation activities. So just those two things to think about, and thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Karen, before you give it up,
Assemblyman has a question.
I just wanted to know if you could just kind of update us on the status of the county's aquaculture, the leasing
The lease program?
Yes.
It's finished its third cycle, which is the new applicant phase. So the bill that you both sponsored and was passed has been, the county's done a great job with that program. The people who had the 5-acre assignments have been transitioned over to leases. Grant owners that want to cultivate species other than oysters are able to put leases overlaid on their grants, and now new entrants are able to get leases and start growing shellfish. The one thing that's very interesting about the program is how many young people are going into aquaculture. It's really exciting. And nice to see that we have an industry that attracts young people. They're very enthusiastic and are willing to invest the time and effort and money into creating their own job. So it's a great program, and thanks again for that.
We started on the town level reaching out, and thanks to Kevin coming before the town board as he has done all the town boards and others, and feeling that unless we coordinated all of these efforts that were going on, that none of it would come to fruition, or at least not as quickly and effectively as we need it to. And so we started working with Kevin and Chris Gobler and Bob DeLuca and a number of stakeholders, Glynis Berry, and put together what we've dubbed the Clean Water Coalition. And a four-pronged effort there, and all the supervisors signed on to the effort. Legislators Romaine and Schneiderman have joined us in that. And it's a four-prong effort to deal both with education and outreach, looking at technologies that are more of the mom-and-pop type of technologies, where we might be able to do some retrofits and upgrades to the individual septic systems, working on legislative initiatives that we can take on the local and town levels. And then we started discussing this as part of the revamped Regional Supervisors Association, which is the association of all supervisors in Suffolk County. And Steve Ballone, the new county executive, has joined in that effort. And we made it one of our 3 top priorities for the next 2 years' agenda, and wanting to work with our state government more than anything else, and recognizing the fact that the funding for this cannot fall on the backs of individual homeowners. A, it won't happen. 2, we will get pushback, and it's just an unrealistic way to approach it. So again, we're hoping that our state and county and other legislators will work with us on this effort. But again, it is one of our 3 top priorities for the next 2 years.
In terms of the prescription drug turn-in programs, with the help of legislator Schneiderman in particular, we've been able to bring funding to the East End to duplicate a program that's already in place in the western portion of the county. And to the county legislators that are still in the room, thank you for still being here. I just wanted to say that I think there's a sense of concern amongst all of us who rely upon county dedicated funds through 1/4% or 477, that in this economic climate, we're going to find ourselves having to go back and have another round, essentially, of applications for money that we've already been awarded, because the temptation is so great in these austere times to go back over the books when we've already been awarded grants. So we were awarded $45,000 to cover 5 East End towns to create a program that doesn't exist at all on the East End in a permanent, ongoing way, and I want to ask you to continue to support that, please. Moving on to the erosion, just a very brief comment, not to be too absolutist about it, but I agree with the comments that were offered earlier. The simple reality is that shore hardening begets shore hardening. And I think at some point we have to at least acknowledge that reality when we make the decisions about where we're going to put things and how big we're going to build them. The more of that we do, the more of that we're going to get, the more it's going to cost, and the more we're going to have to fix it. So that's a simple reality, and I would hope we could treat that as a fundamental starting place as we begin conversations about sea level rise, retreat, rather than hardening. Next, very quickly, we've had a lot of conversations this evening.
I just want to remind everyone, we have 10 minutes. We have 4 speakers.
Very good. We had a couple of comments, a lot of comments about nitrogen and groundwater and new standards. We support that wholly. And, you know, as Kevin indicated, there are new technologies that are approved by Suffolk County. I just want to throw out a word of caution. 12 years ago, when we were all sitting around these tables, we were talking about chromoglass and how that was going to be the savior. I want us to remember, please, that the greatest technology for groundwater protection is open space protection. And, you know, if we can't embrace that as a fundamental concept, if we continue to rely on what may or may not lie around the next bend, you know, we're only ever going to be disappointed. Chromoglass is not what we thought it would be, and I don't know enough about the new systems that are online. I don't think any of us does. Kevin certainly knows more than most of us, but I just want to throw that out as a word of caution before we try to save ourselves through technology. In terms of fracking, thank you for your support. That's all I'll say for that, because I think we all understand it's a terribly bad idea, and thank you for your support on that. Last point, you know, the 3 toxics that we're talking about banning that have been the subject of conversations since 1998, in a word, yes, please do it. Let's get this thing across the finish line. You know, at the age of 30, the ripe old age of 30, I had a environmentally triggered cancer that is known to be triggered in people that are exactly that age because of pesticides that are now banned. These things have a shelf life. They have a period of time for which they fulfill a purpose, and then we have to move on. These chemicals have run their course in our community. It is time for us to embrace other alternatives. I understand that not everyone around the table is going to go there with us, but we need to stop poisoning ourselves. Thank you.
We have to educate the future generation, because they're the people who are going to be affected the most. And you mentioned environment. Well, environment and health go hand in hand, and I've always have advocated for that. So again, the legislature and the legislators that are here, we value your opinion, we value your advice, your guidance, your education. So we understand. I am the chair of the Education Committee, and I would love to have a conversation with you to bring your knowledge to the schools. I met with the school districts this morning in my area, and these kids are getting in a lot of trouble because they don't have things to do, productive things to do. We need to give them things to do. So please consider, I know Vito with Cornell Extension, you have some wonderful programs. Brainstorm, help us provide our future kids with what they need to know, and the inspiration that you've gotten from the environment, we need to pass over to the next generation. Thank you.
Just really quickly bring you up to speed on something that happened just this week. As you know, we host the Long Island Solar Farm at Brookhaven. This is a really amazing project that came together. It's a public-private partnership that allowed us to develop the 3rd largest solar farm in the country. It's the largest east of the Mississippi. And this week I got an email, and I want to read you just the introduction to it. I'm contacting you because the Long Island Solar Farm is the winner of the Reader's Choice category for the 2012 Excellence in Renewable Energy Awards. This is an award that's given by Renewable Energy World. Renewable Energy World is one of the largest magazines and renewable energy. Thank you very much.
I would just mention a few energy issues. Let me first acknowledge and congratulate the legislature, state legislature's work on the Green Jobs, Green New York program, which now has on-bill financing. And I can report to you the on-bill financing is up and rolling. We are now, the Sustainability Institute has a grant, we're like a sub-grantee from CDC of Long Island to help get the word out about this program. We have a email blast of about 120,000 email addresses that are receiving information about the program, in addition to all sorts of other outreach. I can report based on a meeting today that since the program was launched in the summer of this past year, that we now have 1,800 Long Islanders who have signed up to get free or low-cost home energy audits. So the program really is picking up steam. We have some 20 groups, many represented here, that are helping to get the word out. And I wanted to give you sort of some positive feedback that this program is up and running. It's a great way to put people to work. As we all know, you can't outsource putting insulation in your attic and things of that nature. So it's a great way to put people to work while also addressing the environmental concerns. One of the things I've often wondered about was that Governor Pataki had done an Executive Order 111, which, as I understand it, stays in effect over the years, even though it could be changed by any governor. But that order set out for government facilities to be renovated. And I've never been able to find out, I think there's probably a great success story there that's just not being reported. So I think government could be driving other renovations in a big way if we were to maybe take a moment and do an analysis of how much work has been done and to what extent Executive Order 111 has actually been fulfilled, lighting and other kinds of renovations at all government facilities. And that's a way to put people to work locally, because if you've got to renovate the building, you're going to put people to work, comes out of your capital budget, you save on your operating budget for many years to come. So I would encourage that that's perhaps something, I've asked this of a number of legislators, by the way, and no one's been able to get it yet, but I think if we can maybe get a report from the state on the implementation of Executive Order 111, the result might be to help make that message that let's all renovate our buildings and our homes and put people to work and protect the environment. And lastly, on energy, I'd also want to point out that the legislature passed a law for better oversight of LIPA, and that oversight bill, I think, is a great improvement over the other bills that were talked about for years. And I am a volunteer member of the LIPA Board of Trustees. I speak for myself, however, not for the LIPA, but I know a statement was put out by our executives saying that they're very much prepared to work and implement this law. But the idea of an oversight of LIPA and better regulation and such has been talked about for a while, but now this bill actually was much better than anything else that I had, in my opinion, that I had seen discussed. So I really want to compliment you on that.
Just to quickly reiterate the talk on hydraulic fracturing, we've already talked a lot about it, but we cannot allow hydraulic fracturing to happen in our state, and Long Island will definitely be affected. So thank you again, Assemblyman Thiele, for co-sponsoring legislation to ban fracking, and it would be great to have your leadership in the Senate, Senator LaValle, to co-sponsor legislation to ban fracking.
One issue that doesn't ever seem to come up, but I think it's an important environmental issue, and that's how we handle our garbage, the things we throw away. About 2 billion pounds of it gets trucked to other states, so there's giant piles of our waste in Ohio and Pennsylvania and other places. The rest of it gets burned in incinerators. There's between the air pollution, the diesel, the soot, the fossil fuels that are used, it's just a really lousy way to handle garbage, and we're also not getting the benefit of reclaiming those materials. Time's up. I'll mention just one other thing. Wind power has been mentioned. We have solar power moving along. Wind has got a better bang for the buck. We need to do something significant with wind power here. There are some locations I think that we can do it, and I hope to see LIPA come to the table, and maybe we can do a few major turbines like you see those beautiful slow-moving turbines in other places. We've got the wind here, and we should do it.
Thank you. We're pretty much on time. Once again, we had a great meeting.